Carlow Says No to Water Charges group. Tonight we have John Dwyer, Clare Daly and Mick Wallace here with us. Later on we're going to have people asking questions, and after they've spoken, then that'll be fine. But can you just wait until we get to that stage? This is my first time chairing, so if I'm a little bit nervous, that's why. The Carlow group wanted to keep this panel neutral tonight with the by-elections coming up in May, so that's what we've done this evening. I'll just pass it on to John. There's not much that I really need to say. We're not here for me anyway, so John.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm okay with that. Okay, a bit about myself. I first became involved in politics in 1980. It's almost 35 years at this point in time. It's quite bizarre, and I didn't realise that until I started counting back. And I've been involved in numerous numbers of campaigns during that time. What compelled me to become involved in 1980 was the prison protests that were happening in the Maze prison and in Armagh Women's Jail. And during that time, it was a traumatic time in Irish politics. And as a young lad, I was inspired to become involved. I then went on to, I suppose, stand for election in 1999. And my background would be in local government, with New Ross Town Council and with Wexford County Council. So I know the inner workings of local government and, you know, essentially where we are today and how we've arrived here. A lot of the story about water and Irish water is based around the bill that will be coming into your door shortly after the 1st of April, and is based around the cost. I think it's one of our own mistakes that we have focused in quite narrowly on the Irish water issue and only looked at that. But I think there's something much, much wider happening here. And that is that this is about water, the resource. It is about the ability to start the preparations to sell the very resource that belongs to each and every person in this room and each and every person on this island. Now think about that for a minute. Because if you hand over that resource to, first of all, a state entity, and without a shadow of a doubt, further on down the road, through EU competition rules and so on, we will be told, and the next government, more importantly, will be told, sorry lads, this water utility that you plan and that you have set up, it's a great idea, but now under competition rules, you have to privatise. You have to sell it on, and you have to break it up. And let nobody tell you that that's not going to be said. So, where we are at this point in time is that, and it's great to see so many people here to listen to this message. Where we are at this point in time is that we're about to enter a general election. And unfortunately, the message that will be given out in that election will be that there will be huge change following this general election. In reality, there won't be. In reality, we will take control from one set of political parties over to another set of political parties, and we will still have austerity, we will still have the Troika, we will still have the EU calling the shots. And that's the fact, because there is no alternative, viable alternative out there that can potentially form an administration next time round that will be saying anything differently. This administration, like the last one, likes to blame for this whole water debacle what they describe as the mismanagement of a resource by local authorities. So local authorities have become the whipping boy of Fianna Fáil, of Fine Gael and of Labour. And unfortunately others are now falling into that trap as well, of saying that we want a water utility, one single water utility, because local authorities have made an absolute utter mess of the water supply and distribution network and the wastewater treatment. When the reality is this, that for the past 16, 17 years, local authorities in this state have been so chronically underfunded by central government that they could never possibly run water administration or water delivery network. They were not allowed to spend on the water network the money that they were collecting through car tax and through general taxation. That was all going into a central fund. So when the system decided, okay, let's look at this resource, let's look at how we can take this resource from the people. They needed a whipping boy, they needed somebody to blame. And local authorities, unfortunately, are the ones that they have blamed. So where are we now? The reality, and let there be no illusion about this, the reality of where we are is that our water is about to be stolen. Is about to be stolen, and the only people who can stop them are the people in this room, are the people who attend those massive demonstrations. Now, simply attending demonstrations will not stop them. Don't be under any illusion about that. These people have brass necks. They will sit in their ivory towers and they will look at 200,000 people mobilised on the streets of Dublin, and it doesn't bother them. The only thing that will bother those in power following the next general election is when Irish water is no longer financially viable. And this is at the very heart of this. The only way, I believe, that we can stop the progress of this theft of a resource is to refuse to pay. To refuse to register, to refuse to pay, and also to target those people who I believe are behind this. People like Denis O'Brien. Most people don't want to mention his name for fear of litigation. I have nothing. He can't take anything off me. And I'll call a spade a spade. People like Denis O'Brien are behind this. They see the opportunity to actually take our water supply and to charge us for it. Excuse me. Very appropriate. I had to take water. That can only happen, again, if we allow it to happen. If we pay our water bills, if we register, if we do all of those things, then they will have won. And just like when they came to take our fisheries, we didn't stand united as a people. What we did was, we said, I'm not a fisherman, I'm not from the fishing community, let them take it. And then they came for our gas and their oil. And they took that as well. And we accepted the excuse they gave us, that technically it would be impossible for the Irish state to harvest this. But the reality is, we have been systematically plundered in this state by the EU and by those that the EU represents. They came for our fish, they took it, was a renewable resource, and they took it, and now they tell us we can't have it back. They came for our gas and oil, and now they're coming for one of the last remaining resources that we have. And the only people who can stop them are yourselves. And they are frightened, by the way. They're frightened at the prospect of Irish water not being financially viable. They're frightened at the prospect of people like you and I, and thousands of others, hundreds of thousands of others across this state, not being prepared to engage or to tolerate this theft, because that's what it is. We can't describe it as anything else but theft. This theft of the resource which belongs to all of us, and which belongs to our children and our children's children. I've been battered and bruised by austerity. Sometimes I wonder where tomorrow's dinner is to come from, and I mean that sincerely. But I'm not prepared to sit down and let these people steamroller their views and their policies, which is about dispossessing my children of their rightful inheritance, which is about making my children unable to access the kind of services that they deserve. This evening I got a call on the way up from a young woman who's working in a job in Wexford. That young woman has no medical card, and she has no doctor's only card, and her child is sick, and she brought that child to a doctor today, and the doctor refused to see her because she didn't have money. This is the society that this system has created. But you know something? Many of us are responsible for that in our own way. We're responsible because we either didn't go out and vote, or we went out and worse still, we voted for the donkeys. But how so few people with such a narrow political agenda can still be in power in this state, I wonder. But again, we can give them a clear message in the upcoming election. And there's an election in this, there's a by-election in this constituency, obviously. And that by-election gives people an opportunity to say to Fianna Fáil, to Fine Gael, and to Labour that we reject what it is that you are trying to do to our people. I'm not being party political here. I don't support Sinn Féin. I don't support any of the other political candidates who are standing. I don't know them. I don't know enough about them. But I do know that unless people start to use the power of their own particular positions, unless people start to, I suppose, use that power of one, I do know that nothing will change in this state. So, it's over to yourselves, people. And I will say one last thing. Since this water campaign started, I have refused to buy anything, not one thing, that belongs to Denis O'Brien. I've refused to go into a Tesco, I've refused to use Topaz. I've refused to listen to his radio station. But mind you, I've stopped listening to RTE as well. There was times when I thought, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just an old disgruntled communist. But it's not me. It's not me. I'm listening to the lies, I was listening to the lies, and the deceit. And here's the thing. What really, really disappoints me about this state today is the fact that all of the pillars are working together. You have the legal profession prepared to work hand in hand with the judiciary. Yeah. And you have the judiciary prepared to jail activists for simply engaging in the most basic of rights, and that is the right to protest at what they feel is wrong. But what's singularly lacking in this state at this point in time is the fact that we have no independent, truly independent media. We do not have journalists who are prepared to question what it is that's going on. And that is the single biggest, I suppose, problem that I feel that we have, because we have no balance. Yeah. Now, fair enough, we have journalists who know what's going on and who are not being published. They're not allowed to, exactly. Here's the problem. The media in this state is controlled by such a small, narrow group of people that it's the perfect democratic dictatorship. Think about that. We have the illusion of an election where we think that we're going to change the world. But the reality is that your choices have already been made for you with the kind of coverage that most media outlets are prepared to give to candidates. Look, there are people far more eminently qualified than me to speak here today. I was delighted to be asked to speak, and I was thrilled to get the opportunity to say what I needed to say. But at this point in time, I'll hand it over to Clare and Mick.